For decades, psilocybin was a marginalized molecule, swapped in Ziploc bags and guided by folklore. Today, it is the subject of exact, precision-dosed science. Between 2006 and 2024, researchers at institutions like Johns Hopkins and Imperial College London ran controlled trials to map exactly what this compound does to the human brain. You see the headlines about psilocybin treating depression, but reading a headline doesn't tell you that a casual 1-gram trip on your couch and a 5-gram clinical dose exist in completely different universes. The clinical reality involves 25 milligrams of synthetic psilocybin, 8 hours of PrEC therapy, and weeks of integration. The DIY reality usually involves eating a random handful of dried mushrooms and hoping for the best. We need to look at the actual data. I am going to walk you through the 5 evidence-based dosing tiers, how to calculate the conversion from synthetic milligrams to dried organic mushrooms, and why the environment you take them in dictates the actual result. If you want clinical results, you have to replicate the clinical math. The dose and the context work together as a strict multiplier, and ignoring that equation is where most people fail. Let's start at the bottom with Tier 1, the microdose. We are talking about 0.05 to 0.3 grams of dried mushrooms. This level is strictly subperceptual. You will not see visuals, and you will not feel a sudden, dramatic mood shift. People who optimize their routines for productivity flock to this tier. They are looking for subtle lifts and daily focus, a bit more emotional fluency, and a reduction in repetitive negative thoughts. The real-world reports sound highly effective. But when researchers ran the rigorous 2021 Imperial Beckley self-blinding trial, they found something specific. The people taking the microdoses reported modest improvements in well-being, but the group taking empty placebo pills reported the exact same improvements. Because the measurable effect size is so small, the clinical consensus does not support using microdoses as a primary therapeutic treatment for conditions like depression. The trade-off here is straightforward. Microdosing carries almost zero risk and requires zero downtime. But if you are putting effort into a daily protocol, you should know the data suggests you are likely riding a placebo-driven expectancy effect rather than a pharmacological one. Moving up to Tier 2, we hit the low dose, 0.5 gram to 1 full gram dried. This is the perceptual threshold. It delivers mild euphoria and enhanced sensory perception, making it an ideal low-anxiety entry point. The problem starts when casual explorers try to calculate heavier doses based on what they read in clinical trials. They run straight into the reality of organic variants. This is a chart showing the psilocybin output of different mushroom batches. An average batch of Psilocybe cubensis contains roughly 0.6% psilocybin by dry weight. At that potency, 3 dried grams translates to about 18 milligrams of the active molecule, which sits right in the clinical range. But mushrooms are unpredictable. If you buy a high-potency strain yielding 1.5%, that standard 3.5 grams equals a 30 milligram dose rule breaks completely. You will accidentally ingest 45 milligrams. For DIY users, that is the core trade-off. You sacrifice the predictable safety of a synthetic clinical dose for a highly variable organic material that could easily push you into an overwhelming experience. If you are looking for therapeutic outcomes, you have to evaluate Tier 3, which is 15 to 25 milligrams, and Tier 4, which pushes to 40 milligrams. This is where closed-eye visuals and heavy emotional processing happen. The 2022 Compass Pathways Phase 2b trial gave us the definitive proof on dosage. They tested 1 milligram, 10 milligrams, and 25 milligrams for treatment-resistant depression. The 25 milligram dose drastically outperformed the 10 milligram group. The reason 25 to 30 milligrams is the clinical target is it hits the threshold required to trigger what researchers call a complete mystical experience. Hitting that specific threshold on the measurement scale is the strongest predictor of long-term healing. You might think you need to adjust that number based on your body weight, but modern trials have largely abandoned that math. Your psychological mindset and the rate of absorption in your gut dictate the intensity of the trip far more than your physical size. There is a 5th tier, the 5 gram plus heroic dose. At this level, you experience total ego dissolution. It is important to state clearly there is zero clinical evidence supporting this dose, and it carries the absolute highest risk for difficult, destabilizing experiences. Hitting that Tier 3 clinical dose triggers a period of profound neuroplasticity in your brain for days or weeks afterward. Your brain becomes highly receptive to forming new connections. But to actually utilize that neuroplasticity, you have to pay the cost of the therapeutic container. That means 8 hours of preparatory therapy before you take the dose, a highly supervised 6-hour session, and weeks of integration therapy to lock those new pathways into place. The molecule alone is insufficient. The dose is a necessary physiological catalyst, but the intensive psychological container is the actual mechanism that translates that experience into permanent change. This chart shows exactly how to navigate these cures safely. You have to explicitly match your specific goal to the correct dose and respect the container that level requires. If your goal is daily productivity without friction, choose Tier 1. It is entirely safe. Just be self-aware that your return on investment is highly likely an expectancy effect rather than a chemical one. If you want to experience a psychedelic shift safely, cap your dose at Tier 2. You will stay out of the high anxiety zones, provided you actively calculate for the potency variance of the specific organic mushrooms you are using. If your goal is a massive shift in depression or trauma, you have to hit that 25 milligram Tier 3 threshold, but you cannot bypass the clinical container. Attempting to achieve a Tier 3 therapeutic breakthrough while sitting alone on your couch in a Tier 2 DIY environment is the exact root cause of failed outcomes and difficult trips. Do not chase heroic doses based on old folklore. Optimize for safety, calculate for variance, and build your container before you ever choose your dose.